They were laughing when I arrived, that soft, private kind of laughter that pauses just long enough when someone else enters the room. I set the salad bowl on the table and told myself not to read into it. I'd become very good at not reading into things. The apartment is modest but well kept, neutral furniture. A framed print above the sofa. My son once told me they'd worked so hard to make it feel like home. I didn't correct him. Dinner moved politely at first. Save topics, work, traffic, the rising cost of groceries, which I found quietly ironic. Then she said it. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." It wasn't shouted. That's what made it land harder. It was offered like a conclusion, calm, final. As if we had all been circling this truth and she had finally decided to say it out loud. My son gave a small, embarrassed chuckle. "Babe," she didn't look at him. She looked at me. I felt something settle rather than rise. Not anger, not humiliation, just clarity. I pushed my chair back, slowly enough that the legs scraped against the floor. The sound seemed louder than it was. "Then she can start paying your rent." Silence. My son blinked. "Rent? What rent?" I met his eyes. He looked genuinely confused. That was the first fracture. "The lease," I said evenly. "It's in my name. It has been since you moved in." He shook his head like I'd made a small mistake. "No, we signed. You signed as occupants." His wife's posture stiffened. "We've been transferring you money." "Partial," I replied. "When you remember." I hadn't meant to bring paperwork into a family dinner. But dinner had stopped being about food a long time ago. I stood and walked to the sideboard where I'd placed my handbag. I carry documents the way other women carry lipstick just in case, not to win. To steady myself, I set the copy of the lease agreement on the table, the bank statements. I slid them across without flourish. My son read first. His jaw tightened, then loosened again. His wife leaned over his shoulder. "This was temporary," he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "It was. When they got married, they had rushed into a place they couldn't afford." I told myself it was natural. Young people stretch beyond their means. I had stretched too once. The difference was I had known when the stretching stopped. They had not. "You never told me," my son said. "I didn't want you to feel small," I answered, "or dependent." Across the table, she inhaled sharply. "Family doesn't charge family." There it was, the pivot, moral ground. "I didn't charge," I said. I covered. "And now you're throwing it in our faces." "No." I folded my hands. "I'm correcting a misunderstanding." She laughed softly, but it wasn't warm. "My mother would never do this." I held her gaze. "Then your mother can take over." It wasn't sarcasm. It was logistics. My son looked between us as if the room had tilted. "Mom, why didn't you just say something?" "Because you were happy," I almost said. "Because I thought if I made it easy you'd grow into gratitude." Because I mistook silence for generosity. Instead I said, "Because I hoped you'd stand on your own without needing to be pushed." No one spoke for a while. I could see the math forming in his mind. The rent in this area. The deposit, the timeline. The reality that their independence had been partially fictional. She crossed her arms. "So what now? You're evicting us." There it was. The word that makes everything dramatic. "I'm ending the arrangement," I replied. Formally. I reached into my bag again and placed a typed letter on the table. 60 days notice, clear language, no emotion. My son stared at it. "You prepared this?" "Yes." "When?" "When I realized help had turned into expectation." He looked wounded, but not betrayed. Not exactly. More like someone who had just discovered the ground beneath him wasn't as solid as he believed. "This is because of what I said," she insisted. "It's because of what has been happening," I corrected gently. "There is a difference between an insult and a pattern. Tonight was only confirmation." "I supported you because I wanted you secure," I continued, "not because I wanted authority. But support without respect becomes something else." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For months I had listened to comparisons. Her mother cooks better. Her mother hosts better. Her mother understands modern marriages better. I had smiled, refilled glasses, transferred funds. I never competed. I simply paid. Now I was stopping. "You're choosing money over family," she said finally. "No," I answered. "I'm choosing boundaries so I can remain your family." That seemed to confuse her more than anger would have. My son pressed his fingers against his forehead. "We can figure something out. I believe you can," I said. That was the point. There was no shouting, no dramatic exit, just a shift in weight. The authority in the room wasn't loud. It was contractual. After a while, I picked up my coat. My son followed me to the door. "Are you really doing this?" "Yes." He hesitated. "I didn't know." I know. That was the part that hurt the most, not her comparison, not the accusation, his unawareness. How easily he had accepted the illusion of independence. "I love you," I told him. "I love you too. But love and funding are not the same thing." I stepped into the hallway. The elevator doors closed with a soft, mechanical sigh. In the quiet descent, I felt something unexpected, not triumph, not revenge. Relief. Relief that I no longer had to pretend the arrangement was invisible. Relief that I didn't have to compete with another woman's shadow while underwriting their life. At home, the house felt larger than usual. Or maybe I did. I poured myself tea and sat at the kitchen table. There will be consequences. Perhaps distance. Perhaps resentment. Perhaps growth. I don't know which. What I do know is this: power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply stops paying the rent.